Brenda, and if you had asked me a few years ago, I'd tell you that my life was near perfect. At the center of it was Lloyd, my husband. From the moment we locked eyes at a mutual friend's party, it was like the universe conspired to make us one. He had a certain charm, an easygoing personality that balanced my own, more structured, goal-oriented nature. Lloyd, do you believe in love at first sight? I had nervously asked him on one of our early dates, still incredulous that someone like him would be interested in me. Hard to say, he chuckled, but I can tell you this, I've never felt more connected to someone so quickly. It's like you complete me, Brenda. Those words had melted my heart, sealing the deal that led to our engagement and, eventually, our wedding. Our ceremony was a simple but beautiful affair, surrounded by friends and family, just the way we wanted it. "You may kiss the bride," exclaimed the minister, and as our lips met, a joyous uproar erupted from the crowd. We were enveloped in a bliss that seemed impenetrable, as if protected by some magical force field. While many people stressed over combining finances or domestic life, we seemed to handle all those things effortlessly. I had a corporate job with a decent income, providing us the financial stability we needed, and he worked as a garbage man. The dynamic worked for us. I loved him not for what he did, but for who he was. A loving husband, full of humility, and a work ethic that I deeply admired. "You know, babe, I never thought that life could be this good," he'd often say during our quiet nights just cuddled on the couch. "Me neither, Lloyd. We have something truly special, don't we?" "Absolutely. We're a team. We'll face whatever life throws at us together." But life has a way of testing even the strongest bonds, and ours was no exception. The only stain in our otherwise beautiful tapestry of life was his sister, Kathy. She was the polar opposite of Lloyd, harboring a kind of hostility towards me that was evident from the first day we met. "So, you're the woman stealing my brother," Kathy sneered during our first meeting at a family dinner. "I don't see it that way, Kathy. I love him, and I think he loves me too. Can't we all just get along?" I had responded, trying to extend an olive branch. "Well, let's see how long this lasts," she had retorted, casting a dark cloud over what should have been a joyful occasion. For the life of me, I couldn't figure out why Kathy had it in for me. Was it jealousy, insecurity, or just plain malice? Whatever it was, her presence was like a persistent itch, one that you couldn't quite reach, and it was affecting my relationship with Lloyd. But we were in love, and love conquers all, right? That's what I thought, at least. Even with the looming specter of Kathy's disdain, I was happy, content in my love for Lloyd, and naively optimistic about our future. Little did I know that this happiness was not built to last, that the tides would turn so dramatically, pulling me into a tempest that would challenge the very foundations of my life. Life has a funny way of sneaking up on you, and just when you think you're settled, it throws a curveball. That's what happened to me one fateful evening. I was at work, wrapping up for the day, when my phone buzzed on my desk. The screen displayed a number I didn't recognize, but something compelled me to pick it up. "Hello, is this Brenda?" a solemn voice asked from the other end. "Yes, speaking," I replied, my curiosity tinged with a sense of impending dread. "I'm Dr. Simmons from St. Joseph's Hospital. I regret to inform you that your parents were involved in a severe car accident. They didn't make it." The words struck like a bolt of lightning, burning through me. "What? This can't be happening. Are you sure?" I stammered, clutching the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "I'm truly sorry, Brenda. We did everything we could." My world crumbled in that instant. My legs felt like jelly, my head spun, and the room closed in around me. My colleagues rushed over as I slumped into my chair, my face ashen. I barely remember the drive home. Lloyd was waiting for me when I arrived, his face etched with concern. "Brenda, what happened? You're pale as a ghost." I could barely get the words out. "My parents. They're gone. Lloyd. A car accident." His face fell, and he held me close as I sobbed uncontrollably. "Oh, Brenda, I'm so sorry." The week that followed was a blur of funeral arrangements, phone calls, condolences, and an ocean of tears. Through it all, Lloyd was my rock, holding me up when all I wanted was to collapse under the weight of my grief. As we stood by the graveside, the minister's words barely penetrating my consciousness, I felt Lloyd's hand gripping mine. "They were good people, Brenda," he whispered softly, his voice thick with emotion. "I know," I managed to reply, my voice barely audible. "They didn't deserve this." "No one does," he said, hugging me tight as the minister concluded the ceremony. Amidst the heartache, there was one glimmer of respite. I had inherited my parents' house, a sprawling $1 million mansion that, under any other circumstances, would have been a dream come true. It was supposed to be the family home for future generations, a legacy from my parents who had worked so hard all their lives. And yet, it felt hollow, like a prize claimed from a tragedy I would do anything to reverse. But life goes on, or so they say. After the funeral, the prospect of moving into the house seemed like the closest thing to a fresh start that I could hope for. "We can make new memories there," Lloyd suggested as we packed up our rented apartment. "Your parents would want you to be happy, Brenda." "I hope so," I said, looking around our old apartment one last time. "I really hope so." As we loaded the last box into the truck, I felt a twinge of hope. The house, a place of so many childhood memories, would now be the canvas upon which we'd paint our future. If only I'd known then what I know now, that sometimes the walls we build to shelter us can also become our prison. We settled into my parents' house within a few days, arranging furniture and unpacking boxes, but the whole process felt like we were just staging a life rather than living it. The air felt thick with the absence of my parents, and although the house was the same, it felt like a completely different world. Lloyd tried to lift my spirits. "This is an amazing place, Brenda. You grew up here, and now we can make it our own. New beginnings, remember?" "Yeah, I know," I replied, forcing a smile. "It's just hard to feel at home when it feels like something is missing." He wrapped his arms around me. "I understand, but we have each other, and that's what matters." Just as we were starting to make ourselves comfortable, a new curveball came flying. Lloyd sat me down one evening and dropped the bomb. "Listen, Brenda," he began, visibly uneasy. "My sister Kathy got kicked out of her apartment. She couldn't make rent. She needs a place to stay for a while." My heart sank. "You're not suggesting—" "Yes," he interrupted, "I think she should move in with us temporarily. She's family, Brenda. I can't turn my back on her." "I get that she's family, Lloyd, but she treats me horribly. You know how tense things are between us," I argued, frustration creeping into my voice. I know, he sighed, "but we have all this space now. Maybe if you're living under the same roof, you'll learn to get along." So, against my better judgment, I agreed. The next day, Kathy moved in with more luggage than I thought one person could possibly own, bringing with her an atmosphere of gloom that seemed to displace the air itself. "Wow, this is some place you've got," she remarked sarcastically as she walked in, scanning the lavish interior. "One could get used to this kind of luxury." "It's my parents' house," I retorted, teeth clenched. "You're welcome to stay here temporarily, but please remember that this is my home too." "Of course, how could I forget?" she sneered. "After all, you're the lady of the house now, aren't you?" Days turned into weeks, and as I'd expected, living with Kathy was a nightmare. She'd leave messes around the house, criticize my cooking, and make snide remarks at every opportunity. One evening, I decided I'd had enough and confronted her. "Kathy, we need to talk. This can't go on." "What can't go on?" she replied, feigning innocence. "You know what I'm talking about," I said sternly. "Your attitude, your mess, your complete lack of respect for me and my own home." "You act as if this house is only yours," she countered. "Lloyd lives here too, you know." "Yes, but he's not the problem here. You are. And it's either going to change or you'll have to leave," I warned, channeling a strength I didn't know I had. She glared at me but said nothing. In that moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, we'd reached a turning point. But I couldn't have been more wrong. Soon enough, a new character would enter the scene, tipping the fragile balance of our lives into utter chaos. Life has a knack for tightening the screws just when you think you can't handle any more pressure. It was around this time that our new neighbor, Mark, moved in next door. On the surface, he seemed like a charming, outgoing guy. Lloyd took an immediate liking to him, and they bonded over football and beers. But something about him made me uneasy right from the start. Maybe it was the way he looked at me a bit too long, or his knack for showing up unannounced at the most inconvenient times. "Hey, Brenda, I hope you don't mind. Mark is going to join us for dinner tonight," Lloyd announced one evening, carrying a bag of groceries into the kitchen. Sure," I replied, a forced smile on my face. The more, the merrier. That night at dinner, the tension was palpable. Kathy was her usual snide self, taking potshots at me under the guise of friendly banter. Mark seemed to revel in the discomfort, tossing fuel onto the fire with backhanded compliments and double entendres. And Lloyd? He was either oblivious or chose to ignore it, laughing off their behavior as playful teasing. "Brenda, this casserole is interesting," Kathy sneered. "Did you come up with this recipe yourself?" "Actually, it was my mom's," I retorted, feeling my cheeks flush. "She taught me how to make it." "Ah, family recipes. Always a treasure," Mark chimed in, a smirk on his face. "You're a lucky guy, Lloyd. Your wife is full of surprises." "Yeah, I know," Lloyd said, shooting me an apologetic glance. I hit the jackpot. As the days wore on, the strain of hosting Kathy and being scrutinized by Mark wore me down. I was emotionally exhausted and physically drained, but the breaking point came one evening when Lloyd pulled me aside, his face more serious than I'd ever seen. "Brenda, we need to talk. It's about the house," he began, avoiding eye contact. "What about it?" I asked, a lump forming in my throat. "Well, Kathy has been struggling to find a job, and she really needs a place to stay. A permanent place," he continued, still not meeting my eyes. "You can't be serious, Lloyd. This is my family home," I protested, disbelief washing over me. "That's just it, Brenda. It's a family home, and Kathy is family," he replied. Before I could respond, he added, "Look, if you don't give her the house, I'll make sure you end up in jail. I'll tell everyone you've been embezzling money from your company. You know people would believe me." I was stunned. This was not the man I had married, not the man who had stood beside me through thick and thin. This was a stranger using threats to manipulate me. "So what's it gonna be, Brenda?" he pressed, finally looking me in the eye. I took a deep breath, my mind racing. "Yes," I said softly, concealing the storm of emotions brewing within me. Lloyd seemed to relax, a smile creeping onto his face. "Good. I knew you'd make the right choice. Kathy will be thrilled." As he walked away, I felt the walls close in on me. But amidst the despair, a spark of resolve ignited within. I wouldn't be bullied or threatened. I wouldn't let them destroy me. I had to act, and act fast. What unfolded next would set the stage for the final showdown. A confrontation that would either break me or set me free. I spent that night tossing and turning, my thoughts a whirlpool of betrayal, anger, and uncertainty. How had it come to this? The man I thought was the love of my life was now threatening me, and his sister, whom I put up with despite everything, was about to take away my family home. But as dawn broke, so did my clarity of thought. I needed a plan, and it had to be foolproof. I confided in Sarah, my closest friend and confidant since high school. Sarah was more than just a friend. She was also a police officer, someone who knew the law like the back of her hand. "Sarah, I don't know what to do. I can't believe Lloyd would do this to me. And his sister, she's just evil," I poured out, barely holding back tears as we sat in a secluded corner of a cafe. "Brenda, this is serious. If what you're saying is true, you're dealing with manipulation and emotional abuse," Sarah cautioned, her eyes narrowing. "You should think about getting out of that house, at least for a little while, to clear your mind and assess your options." "I've thought about it," I said, a steely resolve settling in. "And I have a plan." I outlined what I intended to do. It was risky and leaned into a moral gray area, but I was out of options. "So you want to plant drugs in their belongings and tip off the police?" Sarah looked at me, visibly conflicted. "It's the only way, Sarah. You of all people know how the system can fail women like me. Sometimes we have to take matters into our own hands," I argued. Sarah sighed, deep in thought. "All right, I'll support you. But you know what you're getting into, right? If this backfires—" "It won't," I interrupted, "because you're going to help me make sure it doesn't." Over the next few days, I meticulously put my plan into action. I purchased some illegal substances through a contact I knew I could trust to keep their mouth shut. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. Here I was, an upstanding citizen, buying drugs for the first time in my life to set up my husband and his sister. "Lloyd, I need to visit my Aunt Shanice this weekend," I said one evening, trying to sound casual. "She's been asking about me, especially after my parents' accident. I think it'll be good for me to get away for a bit." "Of course, babe. Take all the time you need," he replied, not looking up from his phone. It was as if he couldn't care less about where I went or what I did, so long as his plans were on track. Little did he know my plans were moving along as well. The day arrived. I planted the drugs in Kathy's room first, hidden carefully among her chaotic pile of clothing in her closet. Then I moved to our shared bedroom and placed some in Lloyd's gym bag. Every movement was calculated, the result of days of observation and planning. When all was set, I took one last look around the house, my house, and left for the rented apartment I'd arranged for myself. As soon as I arrived, I called Sarah. "It's done," I said, my voice tinged with a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Okay, I'll take it from here," she assured me, her tone serious. "This is the point of no return, Brenda." I paused, taking in the weight of what I was about to do. "I know," I finally said, "but there's no turning back now." As I hung up the phone, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was on the brink of something life-changing. It was as if I was standing on a precipice, the chasm of my past widening behind me, the uncertain terrain of my future unfolding ahead. And so I took the leap, plunging into the next chapter of my life, come what may. The next 24 hours were a blur, a surreal blend of tension, anticipation, and an odd sense of calm. It felt like being in the eye of a storm, aware of the chaos swirling just beyond the horizon. My phone buzzed. It was Sarah. "The police are on their way," she said tersely. "Thank you, Sarah," I replied, my voice tinged with both relief and a peculiar sadness. I turned on the local news channel, my heart pounding in my chest as I waited. The moments dragged on until finally the news ticker at the bottom of the screen caught my eye. Local man and sister arrested on drug charges. There they were, Lloyd and Kathy, looking disheveled and confused, their eyes darting around as though searching for an escape route that didn't exist. I felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Vindication, sorrow, relief, and a surprising twinge of guilt. I had done this to them, but they had forced my hand. A knock on the door jarred me from my thoughts. I opened it to find Sarah standing there, her face a complex tapestry of emotions. "It's done, Brenda," she said, stepping inside and closing the door behind her. "They found the drugs. Both of them are being charged." "Did they? Did they say anything?" I asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Lloyd kept saying he was set up, that it wasn't possible. Kathy was just silent, glaring at everyone. Sarah explained, "Honestly, they looked like they'd seen a ghost." "Do you think they suspect it was me?" Sarah paused before answering, "Even if they did, it wouldn't matter. They can't prove anything, and with their fingerprints on the packages, the case is airtight." "Thank you, Sarah. You don't know how much this means to me," I said, my eyes welling up with tears. "Brenda, we've been friends for years." "I couldn't stand by and let them ruin you," she replied, her voice softening. "But you need to think about what comes next. Have you considered that?" I had, in fact, thought long and hard about it. "I'm going to file for divorce," I said firmly. "And then I'll sell the house. I can't live there anymore, not after everything that's happened." "I think that's a wise choice," Sarah nodded. "You should also consider getting some therapy. This kind of emotional trauma doesn't just go away." "You're right, I will," I agreed. Therapy had been on my mind too. It was high time I dealt with the emotional baggage I'd been carrying around. Days turned into weeks, and the court proceedings began. With Sarah's guidance, I navigated the maze of legalities. It was a grueling process, one that stripped me of my illusions and laid bare the harsh realities of betrayal and loss. Lloyd and Kathy were ultimately sentenced to 6 years in jail for drug possession. As the gavel came down, I felt an overwhelming sense of finality wash over me. In that moment, a chapter of my life closed as another one beckoned on the horizon. My divorce went through and I sold the house, using the money to start afresh. I even began writing, turning my ordeal into a story. A cathartic exercise that helped me heal in ways I never